Being 4:59, we can open the meeting. Sign accounts payable manifest in the amount of $6,884.17.
So moved.
And second. Add an extra two. Try to come with two.
I always do.
Yeah.
Usually comes out of ink.
You need a pen?
I got one,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
And we have another accounts payable manifest in the amount of $440,133.13.
So moved.
And second.
And a payroll manifest in the amount of $47,345.07.
So moved.
Second.
And that manifest was for December 21st. Because we have another payroll manifest.
Thank you, sir.
Another payroll manifest for January 8th in the amount of $58,619.41.
So moved.
Second.
And we have encumbrances, this is the monies that are being encumbered.
Encumbered for next year.
Yeah,
Left over from this year that would be encumbered for use next year. There's a
And-
list of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the first one is for Martin Electric for the transfer station.
And that's for the
electrical work.
400 amp meter
Yeah.
socket. And
Yeah.
he has a tentative delivery date of February 15th.
Really,
So-
this year, this century?
We'll see.
And
Yes, we will.
also on here is LHS, the voting machine.
Yeah.
$77,000. And CWS fence for guardrail on Layton Drive. And then $23,958 for paving, Pike Industries. HP Fairfield, have they gotten the truck yet?
They went up today to look at it to make sure everything was being built the way they were supposed to be. So John said
They
they
said
had
hi
a
to it.
successful trip, so they are putting it together. It is in the shop and they are putting it together.
Very good.
And that amount is $76,899. They ought to call it Fred.
Do
And,
these need to be,
Yeah, you'll just sign the,
yeah, we'll sign.
yeah, when she gets through all of them, you can make a motion to sign them all.
And last but not least, to Greenwood Emergency, new E1 Typhoon EMAX rescue pumper, $460,000, for a total of $583,681.66.
so moved.
And second.
When are they expecting delivery of the truck?
So I was gonna get into that. The fire truck, we did not bond that money this year, or in '23, because we didn't know if we were gonna get the grant. So we're gonna have to bond it in '24.
Okay,
So I'm gonna be checking with the bond bank to see, and with town council to see, because the warrant article was approved in 2023, I'm gonna make sure we don't have to have another warrant article in 2024. I don't
okay,
believe we do, because of the way it worked out, but, they're expecting delivery either late '24 or early '25. So we should bond the money in '24 in case it does come in '24. If it doesn't, we'll still have that money available to us for '25.
okay. And have you had a chance to read the minutes?
I have. They look good to me, I move them.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
I forgot to print out the executive session minutes, but I have them on my computer right here.
Okay,
So, if you could take a look and also vote on that.
Is this-
Should I, or we can,
If you're,
to go up, Cal, just the,
yep, the arrows.
yeah. Let's be going.
no,
Let's see if we can. There we go. I'm gonna go back up to the top, so Ken can, yep. There we go.
this is,
You guys didn't say anything.
No,
no,
no, that's fine.
What happens to these notes now, these minutes?
So you voted for them to be sealed, so I put them, I print them out, I put them in an envelope, I put them in a drawer in the office with all of the sealed executive session minutes from forever. And, I actually need to figure out what technically needs to happen, cause there are some drafts that are still on my computer, so they're not technically sealed because I have access to the drafts. So, they are available, but they're in a sealed envelope with a signature on it, so if somebody ever does need to read them, you have to open up the envelope and.
And they have to remain, more or less forever. We had a circumstance several years ago when there was a criminal investigation and there was a search warrant issued and we had to provide some sealed minutes.
Yeah.
So we have to maintain those.
But the minutes, the public minutes get, saved forever too,
Right.
Yeah.
so,
Those are going up on the internet though, right? Or
yes.
the web, yeah.
Yeah, the public ones go on the internet and they get printed out and posted at the Sam Lake House, the store, and the library.
do you have to keep a paper copy for historical record?
Yep, we have a whole box with a nice little binder.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, that's right too.
I just ordered the new one for 2024.
Can the peanut gallery ask one quick question?
Sure.
If you need to read sealed minutes, is there a procedure for unsealing the envelope? And who unsealed it and then resealed it?
So, the only ones that can unseal the envelope are the Board of Selectmen. They're the current Board of Selectmen, yeah. They can, this Board of Selectmen could say, we need the sealed minutes from 1972 for a particular reason, and they could unseal them. And then the Board of Selectmen or the staff would be responsible for sealing the minutes back.
And that's just recorded in your minutes of that.
Correct, that's recorded in the
Okay.
minutes somehow, yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll move those minutes from December the 18th executive session.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The planning board is due to arrive any minute now. I had sent out, I think I sent out a couple of emails, about what they wanna come, they wanna talk about a couple different things. There was one ordinance survivability review, ordinance defense, road dossier, and all cost money and or time.
Yep.
So, Greg will be in, I would imagine, very shortly. In the interim, I have a municipal certification of authority letter that needs to be authorized by you. The fire department applied for and received the grant from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. And in order to receive that, someone has to be able to sign paperwork, and they need a certificate of authority from the municipality. So I put my name as the person that would sign, and you guys just have to vote to authorize me to sign. So I need a motion and a vote to authorize me to sign for paperwork, grant paperwork for the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. So it's right there.
Yeah. All right. Want me to make the motion?
Yes.
All right. So I'll make a motion that this select board authorize Ken Folsom to be the,
Signatory.
what's their signatory, thank you, in the municipality certification of authority for the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're not gonna sign it, Cheryl, it has to be the town clerk.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, I
So,
don't need to
yeah,
sign
yeah,
it.
yeah,
No.
yeah, and you guys have to authorize it, authorize me to be the signatory, and then Sam has to sign it.
Signs it.
Like
Okay.
a sign, it's like a-
Okay, yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you. And Greg is here, so,
Come on up, Greg.
I'll be right opposite you.
hi guys.
Hi.
I see you way too much now. Did you want to take us into this, Ken? Or would you need to go ahead?
Well, why don't you start off, Greg, I mean, you had sent the original email, ordinance survivability review, ordinance defense, road dossier, those types of things. If you have anything you wanna talk about that, and then we'll get into the other, planning professional, position.
Well, they really, very intertwined issues.
Oh, yes,
because,
yeah, yeah.
Somebody's gotta do anything we decide, should be done, right? Or, we talk, so, master plan is going to recommend a number of things that, based on concerns, expressed by our residents, when we discuss anything about relaxing zoning standards, people get very, very agitated and feel we're betraying them. But whenever I go to any of these symposiums on planning, either Central Regional Planning or Plan New Hampshire, either in person or online, the issue of lot size and frontage will come up. And when they hear 5 acres, they'll go indefensible. When they hear 3 acres, they go indefensible. when you said 300 feet of frontage, they say indefensible. So I think, the one thing I think we're going to recommend is a evaluation of what in our ordinance is defensible and what is not. And I think it's specific things. It isn't the whole ordinance. It's things like the 300-foot frontage, the 5-acre minimum, or the 3-acre minimum. These are, these things have been very good for our town, in my personal opinion, for protecting the character of the town. But if a big developer can come in and tear it apart, we haven't met our responsibility for our residents who are so concerned about this, or our we're not being honest with our residents. We have this ordinance that says these things, and can we defend them? And I think there were more than one point about that, about it being defensible, is the will to defend it and the resources to defend it. If we can't afford to defend it, then it's the same as not being able to defend it, right? So how do, maybe that's something that a planning professional can help us evaluate and see how can we adjust our ordinance to be more survivable, or how do we present, and how do we present those changes and educate our residents about what is necessary to do to protect our ordinance? Because one way to protect it is to allow to relax some things so that they are no longer what would be called onerous and unsupportable restrictions on property rights and development rights, right? I mean, those are important things for all our residents too, but they don't seem to jive with the overall feeling about protecting the character of the town. So I just think we owe it to the citizens to examine it and see if there's a way forward, or what the best way forward, or a good way forward is. I think tied right into that is our road policies. How long is it sustainable for the town not to maintain roads that have people living on them? Some people feel that every road that has a house on it should be town maintained. You go that route and it's a budget buster, right? Is there an incremental way that if there are more than X number of houses on a Class 6 road that has been upgraded, then the town will take on the maintenance? But it's a really difficult issue that the town has been, you folks probably know more about it than I do, but every meeting the issue comes up one way or another. Which leads me into road dossier. The Municipal Association recommends that every town have a road dossier, which is just a record of how the road was originally chartered by the town or whatever. There were several ways that roads have been adopted, some just by continuous public use for historic, some by town action and actually acquiring property rights and different things. But I think the issues we have are not on our state highways or our Class 5 roads. Where people have questions is on Class 6 and discontinued. So if we were going to, we could focus the project on those roads that are likely to be issues for people, and maybe if there's a need in another time, continue on to the other roads. But a lot of what I hear is, well, what's the road? Well, here's what it is on the town map, and here's the Wayne Man research, and here I've actually got the notes from the town meeting, and here's the thing in the municipal association about what the case law says. And it comes back to, but what if it's not? And, so the recommendation in the municipal association handbook is that a road dossier is a legally defensible document. So, so what does that mean? Who is qualified to do that? I'm certainly not qualified to do that. So is that something that a land use person would take under control, or is it something that's jobbed out, or does the land use person or somebody research and say, this is how most towns do it, and here's a firm that specializes in it, or whatever, and then how much does it cost, and then, is it really what a priority for us? Let's see, I don't want to forget anything here. Oh, yes, so a part of defensibility of ordinance, especially something like the building permit cap, which we have at 3%, which as I understand is as low as state law allows us to have a building permit cap. To be defensible needs to be supported by the capital improvement plan. And so to support that, people talk about a robust capital improvement plan, which means looking at not only what you're spending now, but if you had 50 new houses, would you need to upgrade emergency services? Do you need another person? Do you need more full-time? Do you need more equipment? Same thing with schools. There's one other thing we were talking about now, wasn't there? Emergency services, school, because we don't have water, sewer,
Right.
Highways. Yeah,
Highways.
And then last, I think the only thing that comes up in our meetings more than roads, more often than roads, is enforcement. And I do point out to people that I think enforcement is better now than it has been in my personal experience in town. But still we hear, why isn't this enforced? Why isn't that enforced? So is that something a land use person can also participate in? And I guess that would also be something in the review of our ordinance that we might look at is, are our ordinance written in the most, in a good way to make enforcement possible? Right? If it's not clear, you can't enforce it, is the simplest. So I was looking at taking on a mile of road, and it might cost each resident $3.30. I mean, that's really vague and roughly, but if we have 3,000 residents and maintaining a mile of road costs somewhere around $10,000 a year. We have 60 miles of road, right? Our budget is 700,000, something roughly. Take 100,000 off that for mowing the cemeteries or all other sorts of things. And that's 60,000 divided by 60. Now, some paved roads take more on one year, but then less on the other years. And the dirt roads take a lot every year.
Greg, is that estimate based on I have trouble believing that a class 6 road would only cost that.
That's about maintaining class 5
Yeah.
at Clinic. That's about maintaining the highways that we do maintain.
Yeah, I'm just thinking some of
And
the
those are
class,
rough numbers.
Understood.
Yeah.
but I'm thinking that the class 6 roads in this town, to bring them up, some of them anyway, to bring them up to a minimal standard would be quite costly.
Bringing them up to standard is a different issue,
Yeah,
right? And
but I guess that's where we would get into what do you define as maintenance?
well, bringing it up to standard is not maintenance.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way our road waivers are written. You have to
Yep.
bring it up to class 5 standard.
Right.
That's something that the planning board may also recommend, is look at what our minimum standard is. And is it more onerous than it needs to be for driveway/private road that has 3 houses on it, or that is only 190 feet long, so. But I've been looking around and asking around about if there are other standards, and I have yet to get.
Yeah, but I'm also just thinking back my time on the planning board. Once we, the town, looked at a given class 6 road that had been brought up to class 5 standards, nobody really goes back and looks and makes sure that it's being properly maintained.
Ken, you told me that the
So-
road agent does do that.
Yeah, so, on class 6 roads or private roads, when we issue a road waiver,
Yep.
the road agent goes out twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall,
Okay.
and checks on those class 6 roads
Every year?
every year,
Good
twice a
for him.
year,
Good.
and sends a report.
Okay.
And if he feels there needs to be maintenance, then we'll send a letter to whoever the waiver owner is, and advise them that they have the road agent visited, and there needs to be some work done, and list the work, and if they have any questions, they can contact the road agent.
Okay, and if the work is not performed,
We follow up. We had that happen on Hancock Road
that's what I'm
years ago.
thinking of, yeah.
And we ended up talking with town council,
Yep.
had some letters sent, and finally, the property owner did do the work on it.
Okay.
But that is, like, the issue with enforcement is it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time to follow up with town council and figure out how it needs to be done to properly be done. It's not fair just to, well, and not legal to just go do whatever you think you need to do. So I guess let's talk about road waivers for a second. So this is why they're important, right, what you were just talking about. But there's another step which the planning board requires on development on private roads, which is a road maintenance agreement, which is in the deed of the properties. So to approve a subdivision, like to approve a subdivision on Wyven Road, we're requiring that those people enter a road maintenance agreement to maintain that section of the road. But how do we deal with it when there's already one house there that doesn't have a road maintenance agreement?
Right.
So I would encourage you to think about when you issue a road maintenance agreement, if there are no other houses there yet, require it. That's because it's part of the building permit process, right? They're likely not going to come in front of the planning board. And then we've tossed around some ideas about how to encourage residents on unmaintained roads who do not have road maintenance agreements. Like we were discussing this, the Welch Road, they have road waiver, but they don't have a road maintenance agreement, as I understand it. Which, you know how much problems that's caused everybody. So how do you encourage that to happen? One thing we thought is a short-term tax abatement of a few $100s. If everybody on the road agrees to goes in on the road maintenance agreement, then everybody gets it for 5 years or some, that's just throwing out some numbers there, but an idea. but then you got one guy who's holding out, and you're creating friction between this group of neighbors. It's really this difficult problem.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time, and more about the land use professional. I think I gave him a lot to do.
Yeah, and that's Greg, I met with Greg today and we discussed that position. And I know we talked about it at budget, the budget committee had some concerns. And the discussion today more or less centered around moving forward, even though the planning board is coming close to the end of the master plan and the zoning and all that stuff they've been doing the last few years. There is still an awful lot of work that has to be done, which the planning board secretary typically does right now. However, as Greg mentioned, with a lot of the questions that have surrounded these public meetings in discussions about the master plan and zoning regulations, things like that, how defensible is something that we have in place that hasn't been, I guess, updated in a while. Our last capital improvement plan update was in 2019, and Jan and I are the ones that did it. So, and the planning board has so much on their plate, it's hard for them. It is a responsibility of the planning board to do, but at the same time, with a volunteer board, if you don't have somebody that does all the legwork on something like this, it's just not gonna get done.
Yep.
I think that's just a reality of it. And so the planning professional, that position that we're asking to fill this year would do that. We would hope that we could find somebody either A, with some kind of experience with planning, or B, that is able to get classroom and some training in that and help us out with those areas. So we budgeted for it, it's in the budget now. Obviously the budget isn't finalized, but that's where it is. And again, with the planning board, I've talked with Mandy, I've talked with Joel. They both feel that there could be some crossover with code enforcement in that position. So those are the, I guess, the reasons why we're asking for that position to be funded, and I guess that's what we would use when the time came to justify it at budget and town meeting.
I would think another argument, but Greg, do you remember, was it 2022 when the legislature passed that law that basically starts the clock ticking when somebody does an application to either planning and or zoning? So I think that's another argument we can use.
We've come really close to missing.
That's what I was thinking, is we unfortunately have with, as Ken said, with volunteer boards, that's just a fact of life, so.
So you talked about things that Mandy is doing for the planning board now, of reviewing and trying to do an initial completeness review, but things have become a lot more technical and involved, and so somebody who had more experience or more training in it could go to, because I said to Ken, do we really examine every one of those items on those subdivision plans, all those notes? And if we do read them all, do we understand what they mean?
Yeah.
It's gotta be, what, 30 or 40 on that page on
Very often.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and if you get a site plan on those, there's all sorts of notes by the engineering firm, and if you haven't had either a lot of experience with it or some kind of technical training, there are some things on those that you probably don't understand. And it could be a critical note that could give the board insight on whether to grant the application or not.
Yep.
So I think the town has been lucky in the past with all these subdivisions that have gone through and the site plans, that we haven't run into any major problems. I know there was one this year for the, down on Hall Road for an expansion of a business down there. And the planning board, talked about the impervious, area of the parking lot, because it was gonna be expansion of the parking lot. And that is a concern down in that area, because it's on a
Yeah.
water table, so. And again, with a planning board that is volunteer, how can we ask them to keep all these technical things in their, you know, in their mind when they have a lot of other things going on, and where this would be a paid, position would be able to identify those.
And sadly, we have seen a couple applications come through with actual, appearing to me to be intentional misrepresentation of what's up. You know, that if they'd gone through, somebody could have taken advantage of it in some way that isn't fair to other, other abutters or.
So how do we go about setting something up like this? Do we have to send out applications for people to say they're interested?
So what we would do is we'd put a notice out that we're seeking employment, from a person that, for this position, and Mandy and I are working on a job description. So we would have that available, and obviously we'll talk with Greg once we get the job description kind of fleshed out. And we're looking at other municipalities, what they have for job descriptions, and try and fit it into what Canterbury has, and come up with a job description and advertise and see what we get.
How do you go about setting wages on something like that?
Well, that's, again, we'll contact other towns and see what they're paying them, and I put in the budget, for a placekeeper, I put in the budget $20 an hour for 15 hours a week, just to put that position in the budget. Give us some place to start from. I don't know if, obviously, until we delve a little bit deeper into this, I'm not sure what we're gonna come up with, but.
So we talked about a variety of solutions. It doesn't have, maybe some part of it can be contracted out, and there's an amount of, so this job includes some of the things that our current secretary is doing. So you've moved some money from the secretary's budget into this position, but my big concern is finding somebody who is even basically competent. It's so hard to find good people. So I think we need to be flexible and creative about how we approach it, and when we find the right person, make sure we take advantage of it.
So when we did this with Tyson several years back, we actually talked to Mandy and we all agreed on what she was gonna be doing, so those parts of it would come out and go into the salary of this new person, or how would that work?
I'm not sure what Mandy is, I think that's a discussion of what Mandy feels that she can still take care of, and what is the best thing to have somebody else do.
Yeah, and we didn't boost Mandy's salary when she took that extra work on. We talked to her and she didn't feel it was gonna be, the things that were being asked of her weren't going to cause her a huge workload increase. It was really, anybody that came in with an application, with a question, she would try and answer those questions. And it's been minimal, and it has been helpful, but at the same time, she's not taking the applications or the site plans or subdivisions and applications and going through them with a fine-tooth comb. She looks at the application and makes sure the lot number and all the information that is there. And I know I talked to, in our discussion today, Greg said that planning board is changing their procedure a little bit to allow for the first meeting to not be a public meeting with or public hearing with the abutters and everybody. It would be like a preconceptual type meeting with the applicant to make sure that the application and all the other paperwork is complete. So that's helpful. It's helpful, so we're not asking the abutters and a planning board and the applicant to all come in and have the planning board make a decision in that meeting. But it still adds to the workload of the planning board. And again, it's one of those things where, we have to be realistic about people's schedules today, and everybody's busy, and let's try and, minimize these volunteer boards and committees, minimize their time that they have to spend doing these things, and have as much information provided for them so they can actually come in and make a decision instead of trying to look at all the technical aspects of it. And I guess I'd almost compare it to when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we did not have a town administrator. And Jan, who was the selectman secretary, prepared a lot of things for us, but she couldn't make decisions. She couldn't advise a lot of people on things, so it was up to the Board of Selectmen. And our selectmen's meeting used to run from 7 o'clock at night till at least 11, if not later. And once we got a town administrator, that was reduced markedly. And you guys see all the notes and everything that I send you on a day-to-day basis and what you have here. And can you imagine if all that prep work wasn't done ahead of time? How long it would take you to do your job? And I think that's where the planning board is now. They're in a position now where there's a lot of work to be done ahead of the meeting, and that's what we're asking about this position.
Yep.
Right, and to catch up on this, where is our ordinance in terms of the world of defensibility and sustainability? It's important to, there'd be a lot of really unhappy people if there was an act. Well, we know what it would be. It would be a large developer coming in and with 500 acres and trying to put in 200 homes, all selling, mansions selling for pushing $1 million.
So, as far as the warrant articles that the planning board's been working on, do we have to review them as a select board and say, we're in favor of this, or?
So you don't have to. Zoning amendments can be brought forward either by the planning board or the Board of Selectmen. Typically, the planning board brings zoning amendments to the town warrant. I sent off all the zoning amendments and the language to the town council today. I had a discussion with our town council on the phone, and he reiterated kind of what Greg said, is that our zoning ordinances have been around for a while and haven't had a big makeover in a long time. And he said most other municipalities have gone through a fairly comprehensive makeover, and he's kind of surprised that Canterbury hasn't had to. And I gave him the information, and he looked at the email real quick and looked at some of the proposed ordinances and said, yeah, this is a step in the right direction, so.
It helps having the Central Regional Planning Commission helping, because that, you sit there and listen, you think about, well, how does that affect this? And they've already thought that through or understand the problem there, and I don't think we would have gotten through without.
Oh, they've been fabulous. Yeah. And I think the value we get per dollar is just remarkable.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
You could save money by not putting so much salt in front of the town office.
So that's today. Actually, wow.
Does the peanut gallery get to give 2 thumbs up to the planning board?
Thanks.
And that's something I want you to keep an eye on.
Oh,
Absolutely.
actually, can I say one other thing? What Kent was asking about the support from so very often you'll see warrant articles recommended by the select board. Of course, we'd like your recommendation, but I know some people don't feel it's appropriate for them to recommend on some things or feel differently about them. So I don't know the best way to approach that, if you agree.
Yeah, and the selectmen can give their recommendation one way or the other on warrant articles, I don't know that the selectmen have really authored any opinions on any zoning amendments in the recent past.
Yeah.
I think the historic district said that that you had agreed to support their amendment.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And that was,
Those are those
and that was because the historic district can't propose a zoning ordinance amendment,
I see.
just the planning board or the selectmen. So the HDC came to the board of selectmen and asked if they felt that they were in favor of their
So that's
proposed.
proposed by the board, by the
Correct.
select board, and
Correct.
ours is proposed by the,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Right. Well, I don't know if you wanna think about the recommendation thing, because, Historic Commission also asked if the planning board would recommend their articles, which
Yeah.
we have agreed to do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you later.
Yep.
Take care.
New business, old business?
I do have a couple things for new business, and I guess, if the Board of Selectmen has any agenda items that you wanna discuss at a meeting, could you email it to myself or Cal ahead of time so we can put it on? I just, for the sake of having everybody on the same page and knowing what's going on, just a request for that. And certainly that doesn't mean that if something happens on the day of the meeting that you wanna bring it up, or if you remember, hey, oh geez, I gotta talk about this tonight, that's fine, but if you know ahead of any agenda items that you wanna discuss, just let us know and we will certainly put it on. And then, another, I guess this is new business. We had a situation, at our last meeting where we discussed, went into executive session and discussed some issues. I had, employee from the town, contact me a couple days later, and apparently, I don't know how, I don't know what happened, but they were approached by another member of the public, and it sounded very, I guess, it sounded like they were privy, this other member of the public were privy to the discussion that happened that night. I just wanna give you guys a heads up. There is an RSA that covers this, that any closed session, any executive session, and that is covered by the right to know law. And to protect the town, I'm just throwing this out there, this is to protect the town. Any discussions that are held are confidential. And RSA 42(1)A provides for the removal of an elected official if that is violated. I'd hate to see one of our employees, whatever the discussion revolves around, come back on the town and say, something happened, somebody knew this, my information was revealed, and I'm going after you guys. So, please, if there's discussion with a member of the public that is not on the Board of Selectmen, any of this information that we discuss at these closed meetings has to remain confidential. It's just, it protects the town. We don't want the town to get in a lawsuit. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Ken, is there a possibility that we continue to broadcast when we went into executive session?
I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
I had shut it off.
Yeah.
I had shut it
Okay.
off. Yeah. So it was a tough situation, and we'll move on from here and just, that's it, so. That's it for new business. Old business, I have the budget, and I'd like to do a couple things ahead of that. We have the zoning violation at the country store that you guys had tabled at the last meeting, and kind of like to get a decision on tonight.
Did anybody contact the HTC?
I did not.
I did not either.
Is, we had,
We had discussed not enforcing the rules, right?
So I took a drive around town this past week, deliberately looking at businesses, looking at their signage, and came up with, at a quick count, 6 businesses that are also not in compliance. So I've stopped at the store, I've looked at the signs, they're professionally done, they're in character with that building. The select board has the authority to not enforce. It's not gonna set a precedent, so I suggest we just not enforce.
So I went out driving after that meeting and looking at things. I should have just taken pictures, because some of the shit that's on the outside of buildings is amazing to look
Yeah.
at. I mean, cigarette ads and, I mean, Barnstead, the whole thing is covered with signs. You can't even see the building hardly.
Yeah.
So
but where this is in the Historic District Commission, and they were very stringent about what people can and cannot do with windows, doors, and whatnot.
right.
And you don't think the signage is,
I think when I look at other buildings, other places, I mean, there's even still some down at the Exit 18 store there, right? There's still stuff. And there's not just one sign. If we had, I don't know how to describe this. I think if the ZBA or the HDC had been worried about it, they would have said something at that point, right? Because every time something happened on that store, they'd come over to the HDC and talk about it. Kevin would talk about it because he was the guy that was doing most of the work too.
right, but wouldn't you think he would have mentioned that, hey, we're gonna put these signs up, we know that it doesn't comply with what the regs say, but so it would be on record?
I wish they had.
Yes, I do too, I do
You
too,
know, I think
because
that's
I
their
have,
job. I don't know, is it ours to go around and find things that are wrong that were done?
I don't believe it is.
I don't either.
It's not the, yeah,
it's not,
the job of the selectmen is not to look for violations, but if you're notified of a violation, you have to act on
right,
it. And that's what happened. You were notified of a violation, and now you have to act on it in some fashion, that's all.
Can the peanut gallery ask a quick question?
certainly.
Have you determined that it is actually a violation versus a matter of opinion?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
it is a violation.
We'd specify how big it can be, how many sides you can show, whether it's lighted or not. You know, there's a whole series of little
Okay.
things.
But I guess my question is, the whole ordinance that was written for the HDC, what were their specifications for any signage?
They're the same as us, the same as the town
There's-
zoning regulations.
There's no, the
There's no-
HDC doesn't have any particular sign
Right.
ordinance or regulations in their section of the zoning ordinance. Only the town has a sign ordinance.
And so you drove around town, what's that in the historic district?
I don't know that there are any other businesses in the historic district.
Well, you got Shaker Village, I mean, that's not what it's, SW Shaker Village, something or other, I forget what it is.
I lost-
Shaker Village Historic.
That's their own, they're in their own,
But our,
it's the
but
same.
our historic district commission has authority over that.
That's right, it's
Right.
the same type of thing.
so,
And so do you guys.
yeah,
And there are considerably more than one sign.
And sizes that exceed the maximum
Right,
So it just strikes me as unfair that we singled this business out on the basis of a complaint. When, once again, as I drive around town, there are a number of businesses that are not in compliance.
So do we need to make a motion and officially back away from this thing, or?
It's up to the chair. I don't know that you're required, but.
no, we're not required. But I just think it's important that we enforce the rules. And if we ignore, like he was talking defensible and indefensible, right? What if somebody comes along and says, hey, you made these rules for, and you guys aren't doing anything. And now you ignore, and I know the sign's okay, but it's just the principle that we're not taking heed of these signs. Especially right in the center. You know, that's.
Pretty
And-
obvious.
And when you have the whole zoning board, they were the whole zoning board is the ones that complained, right?
No, this was Joe. He was the
Was
only
it just
one.
Joe?
He's the one that made the complaint. I don't know whether the ZBA, I think they discussed it. I don't know if it's, I didn't look at the minutes to see
Yeah,
whether that was discussed or not. I don't know.
I thought it was, I thought I read someplace it was, maybe not, but I just have mixed feelings about this. I don't feel that,
I mean, at this point, I would guess if you're not all unanimous in your opinions, then you should probably, someone should make a motion about something so you could take a vote, so it could be recorded in the minutes who voted, you know, or that the Board of Selectmen voted to enforce the regulation or not to enforce the regulation. I think at this point, if you're all on the same page, there wouldn't be a problem, but I think there might be some.
mine's based on principle, I guess. And I just don't, you know, going back to the land use person that we're gonna hire, is that gonna make some of the violations you see around town, is that person gonna be able to bring it forward? See, if Beth was on a committee and they had made some rules and somebody did something wrong. And the peanut gallery said, hey, this is going on.
I think we shut the peanut gallery down right now.
So,
Peanut gallery's quiet.
can I just, when we find out there's a violation, typically we notify the property owner that there's a violation. And we try to work with that property owner to correct the violation, is what we typically do. I don't know how you guys wanna move forward with this. And if you choose not to, that's fine too. It's your decision, it's your as a board decision on how you move forward with this. I know in the past, the board has decided that even without trying to notify the property owner, they're not gonna enforce any zoning violation.
Right.
But there has also been some cases where the board has said, no, we think this is important enough and we need to notify them and we'll try and work with them, but if all else fails, then that's what the zoning says and that's what it's gonna be. So it's never been, I guess, I don't wanna say consistent, it's been consistently inconsistent, I would say.
Yes. That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. So what's your pleasure, gentlemen? I know what it is, but,
Let it say,
well,
I just don't know how we can change it at this point. I mean, do we go out and tell the others then that we're gonna start enforcing these
well,
things?
I thought a lot about that too with the different signs around town that you see. And it's dependent upon what's allowed in that district. It's basically the same thing everywhere.
Everywhere.
I think that if anything, you need to look at your sign ordinance again, or have somebody look at
Yeah, that's probably good. Tell
Overall.
Brady's got another thing to work
it.
on.
Overall, because as more and more people have home businesses and,
Yeah.
because I've seen a lot of signs,
Yeah.
so,
Well, and you've got them like, there's one at the stand, and then there's one down at the corner directing you up to the stand, and then there's one at the center directing you to
Yep.
yeah, and it's just, what do you wanna see around town? Do you wanna see signs everywhere, or do you wanna see a lot, people have their property rights, obviously, but,
Hmm.
you don't wanna see big neon signs.
But I guess the point, going back to the very beginning, is that the signs are attractive and in character with that type of a business. I did review the ordinance, and as we've all seen, the signs do change from time to time, based on what they've got available. The ordinance does talk to parts of that I think it's geared more toward people that are perhaps selling vegetables or, things. But certainly, I think that there is some application here for the store. So, and, once again, whoever made them, did a great job, they look good.
the, they changed too, I don't know if you've noticed,
Yeah,
but
I have.
pizza
Yeah.
comes out one
Yep.
time and it disappears again.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make a motion that in this case, and in this case only, we choose to not enforce the ordinance.
And I'm gonna second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Right.
What else is on our list?
The budget?
The trailer issued parking on Old Schoolhouse Road. I think I forwarded you guys an
Yep.
email with a picture.
Yep.
John that is the right of way, even though the property owner of that house did improve it, without permission. He brought in a bunch of gravel and stuff and made a parking spot, but that is in the right of way. They explained to me that they can't park the trailer where it is because they're having their customers park their vehicles there because the snow slides off the roof of the barn onto the customer's vehicles, and they didn't wanna have a liability of that. In the past, they've parked the trailer further up, towards the, untraveled portion of that road, and they feel it's far enough away from their facility that it makes things difficult in the winter. So, they're stuck at wanting to park it in the right of way where that oil truck was parked in the picture.
Yeah.
John's saying, nope, that's the right of way. So, I guess I'm asking you,
I think we gotta go with our road agent on this one, that's what
Yeah.
it feels like to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
There was, no, don't bring it up again.
What?
He had wanted to close that road at one point, didn't he, because he,
Yeah,
can't remember what the reason
that
was.
was the first year you were on.
Yeah,
I don't even remember, but
I think they came in.
they did,
Yeah.
they did. And I don't know what their reasoning was.
Okay, and the next thing under old business is the town report dedication. We need to come up with a decision on that.
Is that in public session?
It's probably not an RSA saying it should be an executive.
It's not a, if you go into executive session, it's really to be discussed, matters should be discussed that may, cause, I guess, impugn someone's character,
Yeah.
Okay,
from the result of the discussion.
so,
And I don't know that we would impugn anybody's character by discussing, and it's not that we,
we can do it
it's
generic.
not that we advertise who we're gonna dedicate it to, we try to keep it a surprise for that person. So, but we've never really, and then I guess that's for the audience to say is, we try to surprise the honorary person.
Put the peanuts in your ears.
The peanut gallery will not say anything. I cannot say who is currently watching this.
Maybe Edgar could mute this part or something.
We could all hum loudly, I suppose.
Could we relay our thoughts to each other?
And you can do that via email, this is not
That's
a,
what I was.
there's no vote, this
Yeah.
is a kind of an informal
Yeah.
type thing.
Okay.
So, I would say, email your discussions, your thoughts on it to each other,
Okay,
and then, I mean, you can say person A, B, or C with a name beside it, and do that, and then let us know.
Yeah.
And that way we can, just move forward without letting the cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Yeah.
yes,
Okay,
all right.
that sounds like a good, okay.
And
Thank you,
probably
thank you.
by the first of next week.
The peanut
First
gallery
of
would
next-
only request that you get a nice picture of them.
Yes, we will try to do something.
Because last year's picture was really bad.
It was an old picture.
God, it was horrible.
We searched high and low.
I know, you could have just asked me, I would have gone out for a drink and taken a picture.
Well, we thought of that.
Hey,
Time was running short.
Just email me your thoughts.
all right.
And same,
Yep, understood.
and on that note, Ken, when you get your report done, I have a helper on the selectmen's report, and that's the other thing. If
Okay.
you guys have anything to add to the,
Yeah, I mailed out dates on
I
when
saw
things
that, yep,
are due,
Yep.
particularly everybody's report, planning board, selectmen, ZBA, everybody. And then the deadlines for, dates of voting and things like
Yep.
that, so, as I've explained to our staff, I've probably said it a million times in the last 2 months, the time gets compressed right now, and, so we have to, these deadlines are real deadlines.
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
We-
so if you guys have any input for the selectmen's, report,
So who's
Please.
gonna write it?
usually the chair does it, the
Okay.
chair does the report, but it's all three of your reports.
Right, so I looked over last year's report
Yep.
just to get an idea of what goes in there, and it looks
Yeah.
like there's major things and
Yeah.
then filled in sort of.
Yep.
yes,
Yeah.
and
And
that's,
typically, my report is on the, I guess, the financial standing of the town more, and some personnel related stuff, where yours encompasses the whole town.
Yeah.
The major happenings in the town, in this past year and looking forward. What are your thoughts on the next few years?
So I didn't see deadline, I don't remember what the deadline was. When do we have to have this done by?
The 18th is the deadline for those reports to be in.
January? or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming up.
Yeah, and part of that is.
make it brief.
Part of that is my fault. We typically send something out a month ahead of time. And this is just one of those things that just went by the wayside this year until the first of the year. So,
And
I mean, most of the committee reports are pretty basic. I mean, you've seen them, you know what they are.
Yeah.
There are some that require some thought, and yours is really one of them. So.
Yep.
I know our cemetery report's coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I know Rich has got something done for the solid waste committee. It looked innocuous, these are our goals.
Yeah, and that's really what we're looking for.
yeah, that's-
One of the things that I didn't put on that notice was, and I tried to find a way to word it without offending anybody, but I couldn't figure it out, was we are limited to a certain amount of pages in the traditional size or our traditional
I
size town
remember you
report.
mentioned that, yeah.
If we go over those amount of pages, we're going to have to go to the big 11 by whatever, 7.5
Yeah.
style report. I know that we have a lot of people in town that have voiced their opinions that they wanna stay with that small book.
I've heard the same thing.
And so we'll do our best. At the end of the day, the town report is the selectmen's report. Everything, from the front page to the back page, it's all approved by you.
Yeah.
We have, in the past, had to edit some boards, committees, reports to the consternation of those boards and committees, unfortunately. And we try to give them a notice ahead of time, but it's still not received really well. So I didn't really know a good way to put it without causing
Concise.
causing people consternation.
Yep.
Sometimes it's one of those, better ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Say, hey, listen, sorry, we had to cut a report by 6 paragraphs,
Yeah.
and that's just it, so. The
So
problems of a small town.
So we don't know yet whether it's gonna be 8.5 by,
I am hopeful that it's gonna remain the same as we have today.
Good.
I think I have faith that we'll, we don't have, it's not like we've expanded our budget by 12 pages or anything like that. We don't have a lot to make up.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think we'll be okay, but we're just gonna have to be cognizant of the fact that the printer this year told us, and they haven't in the past, but this year they told us, you have a limited amount of pages, and that's what it is, so.
Yeah.
so they're gonna be doing,
Yeah, Evans is gonna be putting it together and doing the printing.
Yeah.
okay.
So we're gonna work with them
Yeah.
on that. So, with that said, moving into the budget. We sent you the budget. We've made some changes in it. And again, this is a time, please, take it home, look at it. If there's anything in the proposed budgets, or anything in the budget that you see today, expenses for this year, what they should have been, where we went over, use your highlighter, mark it up, come up with some comments one way or the other, and let us know. I've met with the department heads, we've reduced some of the budgets, and the bottom line right now is on the operating budget, we are down to 2.9% increase. So, I don't know,
I've got one down.
yep,
On the school feasibility study, we still have to put money in there?
We have to stop it, I think. is what the
where,
question, right?
which one is,
It is.
oh, the warrant article?
Yeah, the warrant article,
Oh, well, we approved 12, and we only spent 4,
right,
so that's
That's-
off the board.
that's,
That
okay,
is not part of the operating budget.
all right,
We're looking at the subtotal, all of the department expense line,
Right.
which is just above the warrant articles.
It's on the very
Oh, yeah,
last
got it.
page,
Oh,
the
okay,
very
yeah.
first row.
Okay.
So if you look at it, it's, the increase, which is gonna be different than my number a little bit, because I actually got the actual figures from Crestfield and put it in. I think the number on your printed line is 92,330 for an increase.
Yeah.
It's actually 93,534 with theirs. So it's a 2.9% increase.
Okay.
yeah.
And will that
Here it is.
pending retirement that we've talked about, would that change that?
It won't change it because at the end of next year,
Yeah.
you'll see less money spent in the wage line.
Okay.
We gotta keep that line in there in case
Casey,
the
doesn't.
person doesn't retire.
Understood, yeah,
Right,
And he has made it clear he's retiring in March,
yeah,
or the end of March, but he hasn't given a notice or anything like that, and I mean, you know, people have pulled their papers at the last day.
Absolutely. They have
So-
the right to change. Yes, they
We
have.
can't reduce the budget until, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately.
Yeah.
We can't reduce the budget until we know that person is no longer an employee here in
Yeah.
town,
Okay,
so. But you'll see, if that does happen, which we're all pretty sure is gonna happen, you'll see reduction in expenses on the wage line next year.
yeah,
There'll be a surplus in the wage
Yeah.
line,
okay.
so.
So I see we're getting kind of spendy with the selectmen here, huh?
Where,
We're at the top, first line. over.
That was, proposed for the budget committee.
Well, I was gonna go for like
Yeah.
10 grand a piece, you know?
I'm sure that.
If you wanna make that
raises
proposal,
have
let me
gone
know.
on.
I'm gonna be moving out of town.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes over at town meeting.
It's raised after I leave.
One of the parts of this that's, I think, is very important for you guys to realize or to look at is the warrant articles, the proposed warrant articles for this year. You can see we have the backhoe for $197,950, and that is, the impact of taxes is not gonna be, as large as that. We're currently putting $30,000 away
Yeah.
a year. We have $30-something thousand in that capital reserve account, that we would use as a down payment. And then we signed papers for a 7-year lease, a lease to own.
Yeah.
So that, the impact, there would be a negligible impact because we're gonna continue, the lease is 32-something thousand a year.
Yeah,
So we would pay that, so we would not contribute that $30,000 a year to the capital reserve account
Yeah.
for those 7 years. We would start again once we own that backhoe, we would start again. We're looking at a potential lifespan of 18 to 20 years, so that would give us 10 years of contributions that we could make. And if we go back up to the $30,000 contribution, we'd have $300,000, and that's probably what the backhoe's gonna cost in another 20 years.
Unfortunately.
The same thing for the grader, it's $440,000. We'll have about $400,000 in the capital reserve account, so we're looking at a tax impact of about $40,000. And my suggestion is we would not bond that $40,000, we would just increase the tax rate to absorb that $40,000
Yeah.
cost. And again, looking at going down the line, the $36,704 for the Gold Star is a typical, that's the warrant article, and that'll be paid off, that bond will be paid off in 2 years. So that comes out of the unfunded, unreserved fund balance. And then you have $4,000 for the gutters, for the meeting house, $8,000 for the mini split for the historical society, $5,500 for the folder inserter.
Can we stop just a second
Yep.
here? I was looking at the numbers here today, trying to do my due diligence, and it looks like we're spending a lot of money for heating buildings, huh?
Yes, we are.
Does it make sense to start, like, maybe putting in a mini split on each of these buildings, or? I don't know how much cheaper they are to run and.
I don't know, I think,
Don't we have an energy committee in town?
yes, we do.
They're meeting tonight if you wanna
Yeah.
go over.
Yes, we do.
is that
To
what
me,
you're going
that-
after?
And I think that's a great idea to look at that. I know there was a energy audit done on the municipal building. We have, let's see. In 2023, we have spent $20,470.93 heating the municipal building.
How much again?
$20,470. 9,200 gallons of fuel, which, that's what we spent. Last year, Last year, it was 10,000 gallons of fuel. The year before, it was 9,600 gallons. The year before that was 9,200 gallons. So that's what we're spending on heating that building. Obviously, it depends on the price, but, you know, the price in 2020 was $1.55. In 2023, it was $2.30 a gallon. So, you know, we spent $6,000 on the library, heating the library in 2023, so, 2020, yes, 23. So, I just, you know, yeah, I think it would be a great idea to have the Energy Committee look into that. Our staff time does not allow us to do that kind of work.
So we had the meeting for the planning board over at the town hall the other day.
Yep.
And you can't hear, right? The blowers are running, and so the selectman that was there shut the heating system off for a little while, and then it's like, everybody's getting in their clothes like this, and so we turned it back on, and everybody spoke louder, and you can hear it, but it's just like.
But you remember, before we put that in here.
The acoustics in the town hall are awful to begin with. I've always often wondered whether we should put some of those fabric panels in the ceiling.
Yeah.
It would make the acoustics better,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't do anything for the historical value of the building.
So if it's inside, at least we don't have to.
Right, you wouldn't see everything outside. But, and I get it, yeah, and that's one of those things where I don't know. I really don't, you know, that would be something that somebody that had more time and availability should do. Yeah. We talked about fans in the high bays at the fire station and highway garage a few years ago, and it just, the legwork wasn't, the follow-up legwork wasn't able to be done, so. Anyway, you can see where we are on the warrant articles. The one that is blank, is the dirt road repairs, ARPA funds. We have the money, I don't know what you wanna do with it. It's kinda up to you guys to decide what you wanna do with that money. We could use it to pay the paving this coming year. Whatever your thoughts are on it, it's up to you. Again, I'll reiterate what I said at the budget committee meeting was, cause the thought was, can we put it towards different departments? And yes, we can. However, the workload increases quite a bit because we have reporting to do on the grant, on the money, and using it for one purpose makes it a lot less time for me to follow up on. So, if you want to put it in different budgets, you can. It's just going to take a lot more effort and time for me to report on that.
I've talked to all kinds of people in the day, and I have heard nobody say, don't do it, Ken. So I'm still of the opinion that we spend some money and see if we can't save some money. I mean, the roads are terrible again after that last storm, you know? Lamprey Road is nothing but a series of, like, little ditches that come out onto the road because of all the leaves that have accumulated. The Borough is another one, yeah.
So if you guys want to do that, I'm gonna check and see. I don't know that we need a warrant article for it, but we will have to. We'll have to. I think our best bet. I'll talk to John about it and say, you know, ask him what he recommends as far as, do we just call up, you know, 2 or 3 different construction companies and say, come out and take a look at our dirt roads, and we have this much money, and tell us what you can do. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe we need a warrant article, but at the same I'd like to let the public know this is what we're doing with this money.
Makes
Right.
sense,
I think
yeah,
it's-
in the interest of transparency.
And, you know,
I think we should do a little explainer at town meeting if we're gonna do this.
yeah, and that's why I put it in here under warrant articles, cause I don't, again, we don't need a warrant article for it, but I think we need to be able to bring it forward in the discussion at town meeting.
That's where the impact fees come
Mm.
in. People go,
Absolutely.
The other thing that
Every
John
project
brought
goes
up, and I hadn't thought about it at all, is what do we do with the tailings that come out of those ditches? In the discussion with Dave came down to the meeting, the solid waste meeting tonight, and he says there's a big pile of tailings up there at the dump, right, which are
Oh,
just
no
taking
kidding.
up space, yeah.
Hmm.
And, you know, if that's what we've just accumulated, just think of all we would generate
Yeah.
taking this right on.
Yeah, so in the past, the highway department has brought that stuff to various property owners, and doesn't charge for it, because it's full of leaves, sticks, some dirt,
Yeah.
broken glass,
Gravel.
aluminum cans, you know,
yes,
Yep.
and rocks, I mean, you know, sometimes big rocks.
Yeah.
So, and it's just a part of grading the roads, when you do the ditching, you come up with all this material that is not suitable to put back on the road. So they pile it up and they bring it up to the transfer station and leave it up there, and when they get enough worked up, they try to get rid of it. So,
So if I remember when John talked to us about this, whatever that was, a month or so ago, didn't he talk about, putting some material on the road itself?
yes,
To sort of restore what was,
yes, yeah.
what was eroded away, and then ditching?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I just wanna make sure I understand.
yeah, and that's what it would be, and I know John said if you, I mean, we have 30 miles of dirt roads, and he
Yeah.
said, well, if you wanted to add material to every one, it'd be $1 million or
Yeah.
something like that, he came
Yeah.
up with a price. I mean, this is gonna be, call a couple different companies and say, okay, this is what we have, and how much work would it get done?
Yeah.
Our highway department doesn't have the staff or equipment to do it in a timely fashion,
Yep.
so.
Does the state have any software, do you know, that we could drive along and take a picture and it would say, you got this kind of damage here, or?
So the Central New Hampshire Planning Commission, we had a road maintenance software program
yeah.
that was, came from UNH, their T2 program, which is a road management program. We had that software for 7 years, 8 years, and John went to use it, and it wouldn't open.
Hmm.
We sent a message to UNH asking them for either a software update or upgrade or whatever. Unfortunately, they stopped using that software because it was not upgradable, and we lost all the information that was on that. We talked to Central New Hampshire Planning Commission, we now have a new software program. They came out, drove every road in town, worked with John, developed a system where they've graded, not graded like plowed, but they have issued grading numbers to all of our roads. Are they good, are they not good, and they have a system. So that's all entered into this software program now. The dirt roads are a little more difficult for them to establish some kind of baseline for. Pavement is easy, you can say, is it cracked, does it have potholes, when was it last paved, those types of things. The dirt road's a little more difficult, but they did, they got some numbers. So we have, I guess, we have a system in place where we have an idea of what shape our roads are in. And we would, use that as something that we would contact some companies and say, okay, we have And I think that would be what we do, is ask John to say, okay, which roads do you think, in your opinion, are the worst?
Yeah,
And which roads should we concentrate on, and, you know, what are we gonna do? And then send an RFP out to a couple of different companies and say, okay, this is what we have for money,
Yeah,
and what can you do for these roads,
yeah.
so.
168,000 is not gonna do a lot of roads.
250, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 250
250.
something, yeah.
Yeah.
I have the exact number, but.
So we have to answer that, what are we gonna do with all the junk that we take out of those ditches?
Yeah,
And where's it gonna go? I mean, I still think Dudley's Pond would be the place to put it,
So-
it's mostly filled in anyway.
So I don't, and I'll talk to John about it, I don't know that, I think they're gonna be using more material. The cost and the work is going to be adding material to the roads and not removing a lot of ditch material. I think that they're gonna build up the road surface, but not take a lot out of the ditches, because the ditches are already deep enough. If you add material, you're not gonna have to make the ditches any deeper.
I don't agree with you on that, I think that that's the problem. You go down Lamprey Road, the ditches aren't deep enough, so it runs out onto the road. and
Well,
then
I
the
think
road
that's because of the surface of the road isn't high enough.
yeah, they've dug it down.
And that's- And I think that's where the problem is, and I know we talked to John about it, was if you drive down these dirt roads and you look on the side of the road where they've graded, and every time they grade, they remove some of the material on the top of the road, and it ends up in the ditch, and then they pull it out, and then they haul it away.
Yeah,
So building up the roads is really the purpose of
Yeah.
that, yeah. But again, I mean, I don't know that we need to hire an engineering firm to come take a look at it, but I think a construction company that works,
has some experience.
has some experience. I mean, even if you talk to Pike or Audley or somebody,
Yeah,
GMI, that does a lot of paving, they could probably have some input on this and
Yeah.
experience,
yeah,
along with our road agent,
yeah.
Yeah,
so.
Anything else we need for the next meeting? When is the next meeting?
The 22nd, and that's gonna be the department heads. And I would ask that at that meeting, if you guys have gone through this budget with
Yep,
more or less a fine tooth comb. And, because that's gonna be the last meeting that we're gonna adjust it.
yep,
okay.
Our deadline is, the first meeting in February is the public hearing on the budget
yep,
and the warrant, so that's, we have to have it on that first meeting, because if there's any changes at that first public hearing, we have to have time to notice a second public hearing, which is 10 days, and then have a special meeting for a public hearing, for a second public hearing if needed, to make any changes, in order to meet the deadline to get it off to the printers and everything else.
yep.
So, our meeting on the 22nd is the last time that we're gonna make any changes to this budget, or to warrant articles or any of that stuff.
Yep, so that means really we need to also look over the suggestions from the planning board and reach consensus on whether we're going to support them or.
So that's why I asked if we gotta read that, cause
Yeah, it's
I know.
a lot
I
of
should just
material.
recycle my whole desk at the house, it's
Yeah.
nothing but paper.
I sent it all off to our attorney
Yeah,
today. They're gonna look at it, come back with any suggestions or,
yeah,
and they will, they work strictly with municipalities, or
Yeah.
most of their work is with municipalities. And as our attorney said today, we do need our improvements on our zoning ordinances. And they'll look at it and look at the changes and use their historical knowledge and knowledge of other towns, and maybe compare some to legal
yeah,
opinions and things like that, and make some decisions on whether they feel there'll be, any needed changes.
Yeah.
Before the public hearing on the 18th.
right, yeah,
And then they have their public hearing on the 18th, and if there are any changes that are needed to be made that night, then they will make those changes and then have to hold another public hearing.
Yeah. Two questions from me. Have we heard anything from Comcast with respect to the,
I sent an email the other day, and they
Yep.
have not heard anything from the BMGI.
okay,
I actually spoke with a gentleman from Comcast, a different guy from Comcast today. They're auditing, costs for municipalities, so I sent them our costs, just for the town. We have two accounts, one at the municipal building, one at the town office.
yep,
So he's gonna do a regular audit on it, but the conversation did lead to, the expansion, and
Yeah.
he said, yes, they are doing a lot of work, and they have, Comcast has made a commitment in the area to make upgrades and to expand, so. He didn't have any information on Canterbury in particular, but he said that in his portion of it, he knows that that's what they're doing,
Yeah.
that they are improving, so.
okay. And nothing, we had talked the last time we looked at the contract about removing the density clause.
Yep.
And I assume they're still not willing to do
They're
that.
not willing to do that.
Okay.
So we still have that possibility of not meeting density, or?
Well, that's a very real possibility in the contract, but we don't have a contract with them.
Right,
Right.
So
yeah,
if you agreed to a contract, then that would be part of it. I think they have, from the information that we've received from in the past, they're not, particularly if they get that grant, they're not gonna use that as a tool.
So at the,
nope,
we
go
had-
right ahead, I'm also,
At the solid waste committee today, we were discussing other options of how to pay for things like bags. And they can't, apparently they can't get out from the dump onto the dial-up or whatever they've got now to be able to run.
So their internet service is not working up there?
I don't, well, it didn't sound like from Dave, that's not, well, I'm not sure what to understand that he's saying sometimes, but it didn't sound like they had the ability to do that kind of thing. I don't know what's up there,
That's the
honestly.
first I've heard of it.
Okay,
They have DSL with, well, in fact, I think, I don't know, I'll have to look, I don't know, I think Comcast goes by there, I don't know why we wouldn't have internet available.
High speed,
okay, yeah.
Unless we've never requested it, I don't know. Maybe
So-
we've never requested to have Comcast run a line up there.
So I got several other questions, I'll just come in and talk to you sometime
Okay,
next week.
alright.
It feels like the dump is becoming, like, next year might be critical mass on it to me, right? Are we gonna do something, or are we just gonna not think about it anymore? Cause I don't see what else we can look at as far as getting numbers or any of those things. And if we do something like that, it's gonna be it's gonna be a fairly sizable chunk of money, I would think.
What is it you're talking about?
We're talking about covering over possibly the area that's between the end of the dump or the building and those trailers, so we've got more room that's undercover. And we're probably looking at some change in the traffic where we bring it around instead of taking it through the building, because we can only get one line of traffic through there at a time, where Gilmington has, I don't know, 7 or 8 lanes. And people just get out of their cars and in the rain and walk over and dump it in the building. Their building has one solid face along it, so all your trash goes here, your bottles, all the different things that we recycle, and it's, I don't know, 6 or 8 items at least that we would have to set up. And so, I think the committee's gone back and forth, but I think we're settling now on what we would recommend as far as what we need to build if we're gonna do that. And I'm sort of hoping maybe it'd be something that we could take on together.
so that would be for 2025's budget,
Yeah.
right?
I can't do it alone, I
Yeah.
just don't have the energy
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
I think that's something where the committee would bring forward as a proposal to the
Yep.
Board of Selectmen.
right,
And either say, we need help with the getting costs and engineering and all that, or here's the package, this is what we got.
Yeah.
One or the other, and I don't know what, but I think that would be,
I'd like to see the committee do this if we pull ourselves together. And I think the composition has changed enough, so it might be time to do it.
Yeah. 23rd's primary day, I assume you guys are planning.
We have to be there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we have to be
That's-
there.
I'm bringing it up, so.
It's at the school, right?
I don't know, where is it?
It's at the school.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
At the school,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because we have a blizzard.
That was a lot.
about that.
That was a lot of snow we got. I got 8 inches out of it, I would guess.
Yeah.
We got,
Yeah.
I think also we had 10,
Did you?
yeah, we had quite a bit.
You're on the hill.
Well, it's that line as you come up the hill.
You can always see
Anything
up
else?
Interstate.
I don't have anything
Get
else.
to the rest area.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
See?